Lascancora, and as a member of the Joint Committee on Climate Action, like Deputy Farrell, I've particular interest in this debate, and the committee spent much of the past year examining and improving the Climate Action and Low Carbon Development Bill before it was passed by this House in July. The Act creates a legal framework and sets out the actions that must be taken to ensure we deliver on our commitments to reduce total carbon emissions by 51% by 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. The Oireachtas has done its part and passed the legislation. The challenge is now to make progress on implementing the legislation to ensure Ireland meets its international and moral commitments under the Paris Agreement. To achieve our 2030 targets, we need to move quickly and take steps now. I would like to see greater sense of urgency, particularly on larger projects. I accept that the COVID-19 pandemic has had an impact on the implementation of a range of initiatives, but efforts must be redoubled as the clock is ticking. Last year, during the debate with the Minister, I called for public transport projects such as Metrolink, DART Plus, Lewis upgrades to be fast-tracked. It was disappointing to hear comments this week about potential delays. People accept that there will be issues with larger-scale infrastructural projects, but suggestions that it could be delayed until 2032 or 2034, Lascancora, it's simply not good enough. The Minister needs to take a far more hands-on approach, particularly on public transport. Agencies will follow the lead. There must be a greater sense of urgency from the top. Equally, we need to see progress on Bus Connect's Dublin bus network redesign. We were promised new bus routes with higher frequencies, and there's a need and urgency for this to be delivered. However, if we achieve our 2030 and indeed 2050 targets, a large element of climate change is locked in. We must plan to take measures to mitigate the impact and safeguard our people and our national infrastructure. The Minister will know I've expressed my concerns about the impact of the rise of sea level forecasts will have on the DART line. We have seen the DART out of service on several occasions over the past few years due to flooding, and this is set to increase. Urgent action is required. We need an integrated national plan for flood prevention around Dublin Bay, from Sandymount in the Minister's own constituency of Dublin Bay South, right through to Booterstown, Blackrock, Monkstown, Sea Point, down to Dunleary Harbour, and even further south from there. This section of the coast is extremely vulnerable. As part of any flood prevention measures, we should use the opportunity to complete the Sutton to Sandy Cove coastal promenade and cycleway. This project would open up our wonderful coastline to everyone, while also protecting homes and safeguarding the DART line. This is nothing new. This project has been in the pipeline for over 30 years. In fact, the Minister himself was part of the champion of that cause originally. I hope that the Minister will include this project in the review of the National Development Plan next week. I welcome Minister Smith's earlier comments on the circular economy, and this must be accompanied by concrete measures to support the sector and consumers. Reducing VAT and other taxes for this sector in Budget 2022 would be an encouraging start. Equally, the government must do more to support micro-energy generation. At the very least, every school, Garda station, public building should have micro-generation facility. I want to see this go much further, though. When we see the plan to allow microgeneration operators access the national, or when will we see a plan to allow those microgeneration operators access the national grid? Points by my colleague Jackie Cal earlier on about solar panels and other measures on farms in Europe were well made, and we need to see action on this front too. I'm very concerned about the impact the crisis in forestry will have on our ability to meet our 2030 and 2050 targets. We urgently need a national plan to get the sector back on track and encourage farmers to plant trees. And on housing, we must move quickly to retrofit homes. A commitment has been made for almost 500,000 homes. Again, we need to see tangible measures in Budget 2022 on this front. The Minister's announcement about a €57 million being allocated for community energy projects is very welcome. We need to see action in this area. Fuel poverty is a real issue. It was raised earlier for far too many families, particularly low income and the elderly. The recent increase in energy costs will create hardship for families this winter. We need significant action in this budget to help these families. But we also need to consider the ramping up of innovative solutions, such as the innovation being provided by companies like Energy Cloud, I mentioned them before, which uses surplus wind energy to store energy by heating water in homes and help reduce poverty. And just It is clear, listening to deputies across the House, that there is great support in the implementation of the Climate Action Plan to retrofit homes, to facilitate microgeneration, for improvements in public transport, particularly, as I mentioned earlier, Metrolink, the light rail system, DART Plus, bus connects, and indeed the coastal and inland cycleways such as the S2S that I mentioned earlier. And I hope that the Minister will take this sense of urgency on board ahead of the National Development Plan and Budget 2022 being finalised. Cormac Devlin, Lascan Corda.